Chapter 22, Second Chances. Late 1999, early 2000. The prison staff didn't like to invite trouble, so they made efforts to sell up men who got along. The COs in Delano housed Spooky'o with his old friend Chente. In that cramped cell, Spooky'o learned that hope might spring again in at least one aspect of his fallen life. Chente explained that Rico was acquitted in state court, but was about to catch a federal indictment for the Maikio incident. Chente got a letter from Rico, and he read part of it to Spooky'o. In it, Rico used a female's name as a code name for Spooky'o to fool the guards who were surely reading everything he wrote. "Tell her I love her," the letter said. It went on to ask if she was able to assist. Spooky'o understood what this meant. Could he help Rico beat this new case? "How do you feel about helping the homeboy out, taking the case for him?" Chente asked. "I have nothing to lose," Spooky'o said. Spooky'o was soon transferred to another prison. Because he was a member of Nuestra Raza, he had to be segregated from the general prison population. They sent him to the less famous of the state's security housing units, the one in Corcoran. It wasn't the total isolation of Pelican Bay, and at least in Corcoran, he got a little bit of yard time. He ran into a homeboy from Salinas named Cyclone who pulled him aside for a chat. The guy was corresponding with the Bay and with Rico, and he was following up on Spooky'o's offer. "Go ahead and give me the details," Spooky'o told Cyclone, "as far as what you want me to say when I go over there." Cyclone says Spooky'o would be pulled down to a court as a witness, and once he got on the stand, he was supposed to say he killed Maikio. Spooky'o thought, fuck it, why not? He was doing life anyway. Rico had an alibi all worked out about being in Reno checking out wedding chapels the day of the hit. Regina and her friend would back that up, and this time Rico promised Spooky'o would for sure become a carnal. Yeah, right. The unfairness ate at him. Hadn't the NF already promised he'd become a carnal for going through that fucking trial? Didn't they promise to take care of his family, send cash to his girl and his kid? And they done nothing for him, nothing at all. After the chat with Cyclone, his resentment simmered until the anger churned into a boil. Why did he have to make more sacrifices? He'd shot and stabbed enemies of the cause long ago. Once he and a couple of homeboys got shit-faced drunk and drove around looking for sureños to shoot. They spotted two youngsters piled together on a bike. His homeboy jumped out and asked what they claimed. The boys said they weren't in no gang. His homie put a pistol to one kid's head and pulled the trigger, while Spooky'o used his .45 to shoot the other one. Okay, his kid didn't die, but it wasn't for lack of trying. If he was to be honest with himself, that was the one hit he regretted. Shooting that kid was the worst thing he'd ever done, the single act guaranteed to send him to hell if such a place existed. The victims were just youngsters, and the one who died wasn't even a gang member. On another occasion, he and this guy Snoopy stabbed a sureño to death. Didn't that count? He was sent to adult prison for that, though for only 4 years because the DA couldn't figure out which one of them did the actual stabbing, and besides, it could have been self-defense. And there was that night he and like 24 ends rode all over Salinas shooting sureños. Who knew how many they hit? One had died. Didn't any of this matter? And of course there was Shorty, the hit that put him in this miserable spot. He got no recognition for any of it. Despair parted his soul like an ice-cold chisel. Despite his many contributions to the struggle, his fucked up life had in the end amounted to an insignificant flicker. His early childhood was a blur, spent in and out of foster homes till he was caught running away when he was 11 years old. They threw him in juvie, and at 14, he got busted for assault and sent to the youth authority. He paroled at 17, and he hung with homeboys from Casitas. Then he hooked up with Sophie Rocha. She was the NF's one-woman welcome wagon, bedding him and then connecting him with men who had legendary names like Frankie the Weasel and Louis the Beast, OG homeboys who schooled him deeper in the cause and the struggle for the raza. When he went to adult prison for that sureño stabbing, he was made a bro, tested and accepted into Nuestra Raza. Then there was more work and more bust, and at 20 years old, here he was, working his ass off, sacrificing his girlfriend and kid, and still never making it into the elite circles of the NF, and now never making it out of these walls. He kept going by, keeping up faith that he'd win a sentence reduction on appeal. That hope was extinguished with a final slap when the court only shaved off 3 years to make it 100 years. With a final slap when the court only shaved off 3 years to make it 100 even, still backed by the quadruple life. He'd exhausted all chances, all expectation of ever again cruising the streets, of finding a ruka, making love, kicking it with all his homeboys, playing with his daughter. So what the fuck difference did any of it make? He had a life term. He could not testify. He could testify or not. If he did and became a carnal, at least he'd have status, respect, and maybe he could channel some money to his kid. Rico assured him that for real this time he'd be sponsored and pulled. As he considered what to say under oath to save his boss, Spookio had to wonder why he was going to the trouble and if in reality he was about to be played again. On the other hand, he had nothing, absolutely nothing in the world to lose. Rousted from his gloom, Spookio was all joyous nerves. They were finally bringing his daughter for a visit. He thought this moment impossible, but it was here. Because he was a gang member and therefore a SHU inmate, he was not allowed contact visits. But they led him to a small room where he could speak over a phone with his little girl. He had not forgotten her voice, but to see her face again, not in a photo but for real, wriggling and smiling and laughing with the thrill of seeing Daddy, would be his reward for keeping it together during those darkest of days, when the idea of hope seemed as flat and as hollow as a stupid Hallmark greeting card. When she first saw him, the joy in her eyes made him melt, from inside and out. Her face was thinning out and she was no longer a baby. She reached for him, her little hands grasping at the air, finding only glass. She groped again and again without comprehending. She tried with all her might to push through, to touch him. Then it sunk in that she could not hug her father. She burst into tears. Spookio left that visit with a chasm in his soul as deep as any ocean. As long as he was NR and forgot it, if he joined the NF, he would be housed in the SHU and would never have contact visits. The glass would always come between them. It was so unfair to put his kid through this because of a cause she knew nothing about. What the fuck kind of cause was that? What the fuck kind of familia would require that you break a little girl's heart? He lay down on his bunk and his heart collapsed into itself. He didn't react right away, but the anguish grew and swelled to where the image of his daughter's face once again came to dictate his decisions. His cellie asked what was wrong. He told the story of his little girl's visit. Being behind a window and my daughter crying, not being able to hug her father and be with me, and me being able to hold her was too much for me to bear, he said. He was tired of it all. There were other things too, like the abuse of authority within the organization. His cellie asked if he understood what he was saying. Spookio told him yes, he did. Well, if you do that, then you know what's going to happen, Holmes. I'm going to have to deal with you. Do what you gotta do, Spookio said, and the punches flew. In the morning, they were both still alive and Spookio called for the floor officer. He told the cop he would like to speak to the institutional gang investigation unit. They escorted him from his cell. The gang officers met him, and he said he wanted to step back and debrief. He would cooperate with the FBI and the Salinas cops. He had information, he said. The cops offered witness protection for his daughter and other family members if he wanted it. And on hearing those words, Spookio plunged headfirst into the next pool of his life.